Hey guys, welcome back. This is Devlog number 4. So this past few days I've been mostly working on a keybinding system along with the lighting that I've added, which you can go and check out the tutorial which I released earlier in the week to see exactly how that was done. But I'll be showing the before and after here, just to give you a rough overview of how the game has progressed with regards to that. Talking about the keybinding system quickly, it's nowhere near finished yet. I'm hoping to finish it by the middle of next week for the next update video, and I'll probably show it more in depth then, but I'll go over what I've done now in the plans for it and show you the structure of it. So jumping straight back into Unity here, you can see the lighting that I've added to the scene. So this is scene 1 and I've gone for a slightly different looking scene 2 just to kind of test it. So this is, what's this, like 20 lights on the screen or 15, and it doesn't tank the stats down to, 10, 20 frames. I'm still getting like over 500 frames, but it's definitely tanking it down, and I can see with a longer level with this many lights spread out throughout the whole level, this can definitely become a problem for performance. But I think the atmosphere is looking really nice. Now if we switch over to scene 2, you can see I've put less lights, but I've increased the diameter of the lights and reduced the fall off, so they're just a lot brighter and shine a lot further, less of them. I don't personally think it looks quite as good, but it gets a hell of a lot better performance, so this might be the way to go. Depending on how many I'm putting throughout the whole scene. I've also kind of planned out a way to only load lights within the screen or plus a little bit outside of the screen, so that should help save performance, and then maybe we can spam just a load of lights down. But for now I'm probably going to go with the minimal approach and then add more later depending on performance, depending on how it runs, and if I can implement this other system to add more lights. So just talking about the different lights, all the individual little lamps that I added are all just point lights that I've set up in various ways, added a little bit of tint. There is a global light on just to give a little bit of a lighting effect to the areas that aren't directly within the lamps, as you still need to be able to see. And then I added another point light above where the checkpoint is now, and I changed the checkpoint to just a glowing platform. So I put a freeform light around that, made that glow. And then the final checkpoint, again, another point light with a point light coming from the sky above it to kind of look, there might be a crack in the ceiling, kind of like the checkpoint. And design just some random gold orb that you have to touch to finish the level. So yeah, that's most of the lighting. So there's also a freeform light below the map, which glows red slightly, kind of indicating if you fall off the map, then you're going to die or reset. So that's most of the lighting I've added. I've messed around with different types of lighting and glow effects and stuff like that, but this kind of works kind of minimal pretty well, mostly point lights. But I will look into adding different effects in the future and different platforms that will give you boosts and jumps and stuff like that. So the plan is to use lighting quite a lot to indicate different playable features, different platforms, different maybe even traps and stuff like that. So what you're seeing now is the visual before I updated the lighting, and with the lighting update I also added a new background textured brick look. So whilst I've heard people say as well the minimalist look they prefer and they think it looks better, when I add the proper character to it and add proper animations and everything, I feel like it might feel a bit out of place in that. Having just a block as a character right now, I think it fits a lot better for that. But going into the future, going into trying to develop a game for Steam, obviously, whilst I might release on mobile, that's not the aim of this project. It's I feel like you've got to go for a little bit of a better visual style and more of it's still pretty cartoony, but more of a nice lighting, nice aesthetic look. And there's always the option, if this aesthetic doesn't pan out, to go back to that, and that's kind of the beauty. I could potentially just reskin the game later on in development, and this starter bit is just trying to get the mechanics down and getting most of the main core, because even if I go back to that, I'd like to still implement lighting, so it's good to know this and I can go back to that worst case. So that just about wraps it up for the lighting effects. It didn't take too long, but I created the tutorial video on it and that took quite a lot of time, so please be sure to check that out. But yeah, I think for how simple it is, it's one of the best features to add to your game. It really just enhances the difference between before and after. Is just absolutely insane. It just enhances the game a lot, so yeah. But now we'll move on to the real preliminary keybinding system that I'm setting up. Right, so here in the options menu, super preliminary at the moment, but I've only set up 2 binds, the bind for crouch and the bind to jump. Basically, you hit the set button, you press a key, it sets the key to that. Now, there's major problems with this. Firstly, the event system which I'm using to track what key is pressed, the keys pressed don't correlate straight to the keys that need to be used to check if that key's been pressed with the player. So the input and outputs of the key codes are different. So when you press a key, it will come up saying stuff like keypad 1, but when you then use if keypad 1 pressed, it doesn't work. You need to just do if 1's pressed. So there's big differences. If you use the keys at the top of your keyboard above the letters, it will say alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha 3. But if you use the keypads, it says keypad 1, 2, 3, whereas if you just put 1, 2, 3, they both work. So there's a big problem here, and the way I'm getting around that is going to be to set up 2 arrays, one with the input and one with the output, and when you press a button, it will say keypad 1 will be put in. That will scan the first array. When it finds keypad 1, it will remember the array number, so say that's first, it will be 0, and then it will use that number to pull the output from the second array, which will correlate across. So I don't know if it sounds complicated or not, but in my head it's real clear, and I can always go more in depth into it. Firstly, if you want me to, in the next video, just explain the concept behind it, but hopefully I'll have written the whole thing and it will all be working and I can just explain it all more. So leave a comment if you want me to go over that, but I'm sure I'll do it anyway. So jumping into the scripts for the key bindings, in these versions of it I've set up different scripts for the 2 different key bindings, but ideally by the end I want to be able to have one reusable script with an array set up with each field of the array being used for a different key binding, and then you can just set the number, so drag the script on, set it to say number 5, and number 5 set to the jump key, so it knows to update the jump key. That's the idea for that, but for these I've just set them up. Maybe I'll just set it up as individual scripts, considering there's not going to be maximum like 10 key bindings, so we'll just see how it goes. So anyway, jumping into here, it's kind of basic. I used on GUI to detect when a button has been pressed, but you don't want it to always detect it, so I set up a bool of set key, so only when set key is true it will scan, and set key is only set to true when the button's pressed next to it. So you press the button to set and then it will start scanning for the event, and if the event is a key or left or right shift, because left or right shift don't get picked up by is key. So if the button is left or right shift or is a key, then it will run the corresponding statement, which will essentially then store the key as a string, set the key to my stored variables under, in this case, jump. So jump key, and then it will set key to false, so when it finishes the loop and comes back around, it won't then scan for a second button press. So it's just a one-time thing. And the crouch system set up exactly the same, just replaced all the jumps with crouches. Jumping into the crouch one, again, as you can see, pretty much identical. Stored variables, as I showed last episode, is just storing the data between my scenes, and within that I have jump key. I've set up left and right strings, but you don't particularly need that, and then crouch as well. Now jumping into my player movement script, this is a little bit of a mess and I've been meaning to go back over it, but it works for now perfectly, so I'm not really too worried about it. So as you can see here in my void update, it checks if the key down is equal to, and then it grabs the stored variables and checks the key that is set to jump key. And if that is true and you're grounded, then it jumps, and then crouch is the same, except you don't have to be grounded. Now, that being said, I don't want to have GameObject.find within these two statements. So the idea is I'll run a small script in here, which when the key is updated in the key bindings, it will update to the stored variables and then update to the movement script. So then I can just pull the straight variable from here without having to, every time you press a button, it searches to make sure it's the right button from the stored variables, so just to boost the efficiency a little bit. So that just about wraps it up for this episode. Thanks for watching, guys. If you've got any questions about anything, be sure to leave a comment down below or send me an email, link in the description as always. Wednesday, this should be the conclusion of the key binding system, and then I will be getting into the actual game mechanics that I'm going to do for my vision of the game. At the moment, it's just been basically building a 2D platformer, so look forward to that, and I'll catch you Wednesday. Later.